Why are there no plus plus and dash operators in Python? Why are there no plus plus and operators in Python?
It's not because it doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense to define x++ as x plus equals 1, evaluating to the previous binding of x. If you want to know the original reason, you'll have to either wade through old Python mailing lists or ask somebody who was there, e.g. Guido, but it's easy enough to justify after the fact. Simple increment and decrement aren't needed as much as in other languages. You don't write things like for int I equals 0, I is lower than 10, plus I, in Python very often. Instead you do things like for I in range 0, 10. Since it's not needed nearly as often, there's much less reason to give it its own special syntax. When you do need to increment, plus equals is usually just fine. It's not a decision of whether it makes sense, or whether it can be done. It does, and it can. It's a question of whether the benefit is worth adding to the core syntax of the language. Remember, this is 4 operators postInc, postdec, preinc, predec, and each of these would need to have its own class overloads. They all need to be specified and tested. It would add opcodes to the language, implying a larger, and therefore slower, VM engine. Every class that supports a logical increment would need to implement them, on top of plus, equals, and equals. This is all redundant with plus, equals, and equals, so it would become a net loss.
This original answer I wrote is a myth from the folklore of computing, debunked by Dennis Ritchie as historically impossible as noted in the letters to the editors of communications of the Act in July 2012 DOI 10.1145,209,249.2209251. The C increment/decrement operators were invented at a time when the C compiler wasn't very smart and the authors wanted to be able to specify the direct intent that a machine language operator should be used, which saved a handful of cycles for a compiler which might do A instead of. And the PDP-11 even supported auto-increment and auto-increment deferred instructions corresponding to ++P and P++, respectively. See section 5.3 of the manual if horribly curious. As compilers are smart enough to handle the high-level optimization tricks built into the syntax of C, they are just a syntactic convenience now. Python doesn't have tricks to convey intentions to the assembler because it doesn't use one.
I always assumed it had to do with this line of the Zen of Python. There should be one, and preferably only one, obvious way to do it. X++ and X plus equals 1 do the exact same thing, so there is no reason to have both.
Of course, we could say Guido just decided that way, but I think the question is really about the reasons for that decision. I think there are several reasons. It mixes together statements and expressions, which is not good practice. See this URL, it generally encourages people to write less readable code. Extra complexity in the language implementation, which is unnecessary in Python, as already mentioned.